The throne room of the Vethran Dominion stretched for nearly a mile. Golden pillars rose toward a ceiling painted with the images of conquered worlds. 12 million years of victory decorated those walls. 40,000 species had knelt before the throne where High Archon HFY now sat, reading a report that made him smile. "Humans," he said, tasting the word. What a strange name. His chief advisor, a tall creature with silver scales and 6 eyes, bowed low. "A young species, my Archon. They achieved space travel only 300 years ago. They have colonized perhaps 200 star systems. Nothing impressive." HFY set down the report. His forearms crossed over his chest as he thought. The Dominion had conquered species far more advanced than these humans. They had broken empires that spanned thousands of worlds. What was 200 systems? A small meal. A snack before dinner. "Send a fleet," the Archon said. "Standard subjugation protocol. I want their worlds producing resources for us within 1 cycle." The advisor hesitated. "How many ships, my Archon?" 12,000 should be enough. Let Admiral Thiessen lead them. He has been bored lately. 12,000 warships. It was far more than necessary for such a small species. But the Archon enjoyed sending messages. When other species heard that the Dominion had crushed humanity with such overwhelming force, they would remember their place. Fear was the foundation of empire. The order went out across the Dominion's vast communication network. Within days, the fleet began to gather at the staging point near the Keth Nebula. Warships of every size assembled in perfect formation. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers filled with fighter craft. And at the center of them all, the flagship Eternal Supremacy. A vessel so large it had its own weather systems. Admiral Thiessen stood on the command deck of the Eternal Supremacy and watched his fleet through the viewing windows. He was old for his species. His green skin faded to pale jade, but his mind remained sharp. In his long career, he had conquered over 100 worlds. He had never lost a battle. "Show me what we know about these humans," he commanded. Holographic images appeared before him. Creatures with soft skin and only 2 arms. They came in various colors, from pale to dark. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom. They could not survive in vacuum. They needed to eat and drink and sleep for 1/3 of their short lives. "Weak," Thiessen said. "Fragile. This will not take long." His second-in-command, Vice Admiral Corax, nodded in agreement. "Our neural disruptors will shut down their fleet before they can fire a single shot. The weapon has never failed. The neural disruptor was the Dominion's greatest achievement. It sent a pulse through enemy ships that disrupted the brain function of any living creature. Entire fleets would go silent in moments, their crews unconscious or dead. No species had ever found a defense against it. "Set course for the human frontier," Thiessen ordered. "We will be home before the season changes." But not everyone shared the Admiral's confidence. In the deepest archives of the Dominion, a small creature worked alone among ancient records. Archivist Melora had served in the archives for 200 years. She had read documents that most citizens did not know existed. And something about the humans bothered her. She pulled up star maps showing human expansion over the past 3 centuries. They had spread quickly, yes, but there were gaps. Entire sectors of space that they seemed to avoid. Regions where they had built warning beacons instead of colonies. Why? Melora whispered to herself. What do they know? She requested a meeting with the Admiral before the fleet departed. She was denied. She tried to send a message to the Archon himself. It was ignored. She was just an archivist, after all. What could she possibly know that the military did not? In frustration, Melora returned to her work. She began searching for any record of the region of space where humans lived. The archives held documents from millions of years of Dominion history. Surely someone had explored that area before. She found almost nothing. A few old survey reports, some mineral analyses. But then, buried in a corrupted file that had not been accessed in 4 million years, she found something strange. It was a warning. The file came from a species called the Valorians. They had lived in that region of space long before humans evolved. They had been powerful, advanced, masters of technology that the Dominion still did not understand. And then, suddenly, they had vanished. Every Valorian, every colony, every ship, gone. The corrupted file contained only fragments of their final message. Most of it was unreadable. But one word translated clearly: beware. Melora felt cold fear spread through her body. She tried again to contact the Admiral. Again she was ignored. The fleet was already departing. 12,000 ships entering slipspace, their crews confident of easy victory. She watched them go and felt something she had never felt before in her long life: doubt. The Dominion had never lost. Their weapons had never failed. Their enemies had always fallen, but those enemies had been ordinary species. Flesh and blood and technology that could be understood. What if the humans were different? What if they had survived something that had erased the Valorians from existence? What if the Dominion was about to make a terrible mistake? Melora sat alone in her archive as the fleet vanished into slipspace. She had done everything she could. Now she could only wait and hope that she was wrong. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue world called Earth, a woman named Chun looked up at the night sky. She was old, though she did not look it. Her eyes held the weight of secrets that would break ordinary minds. "They are coming," she said softly. Beside her, a young officer shifted nervously. "Should we prepare the defense fleet?" Chun shook her head slowly. "No, we will meet them with words first. We always try words first, and if words fail..." Chun was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was sad. "Then they will learn why we are alone out here, why every species that once lived in this region of space is gone. They will learn what we guard against. And they will understand why humanity does not fear invasion." She turned away from the stars. There was much to prepare. "Alert the wardens," she said. "Tell them to be ready, but tell them also to hope. Perhaps this time will be different. Perhaps these newcomers will listen." But even as she spoke the words, Chun knew the truth. In 12 million years, the veteran Dominion had never listened to anyone. They knew only conquest. They were about to discover that some things in the universe could not be conquered, and some species existed not to rule, but to protect. The Dominion fleet emerged from slipspace like a swarm of metal locusts. 12,000 warships spread across the darkness, their weapons charged, their crews ready for battle. Admiral Thiessen stood on his command deck and looked at the human colony world below. New Helsinki, the humans called it. A green and blue world with 3 small moons. Sensors showed cities on the surface, perhaps 50 million inhabitants. Easy prey. But something was wrong. "Where's their defense fleet?" Thiessen demanded. His officers checked their instruments again and again. There was nothing. No warships. No orbital weapons platforms. Just one small space station and a single unarmed vessel approaching their position. "Perhaps they did not know we were coming," Korak suggested. Thiessen did not believe it. No species was this careless. Even primitive cultures put weapons in orbit around their colonies. This felt like a trap. But what kind of trap could threaten 12,000 warships? "Open a channel to that approaching vessel," he ordered. The communication screen flickered to life. A human female appeared. She had dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that seemed too calm for someone facing an invasion fleet. She smiled politely. I am Ambassador Chun, representing the United Human Territories. We welcome you to our space and invite you to peaceful dialogue." Thiessen laughed. In his long career, he had heard many desperate pleas, but he had never heard someone sound so genuinely relaxed when facing certain defeat. "I am Admiral Thiessen of the Veteran Dominion. Your worlds now belong to us. Surrender immediately or face destruction." Chun's smile did not waver. "We would prefer to talk. There is much you do not understand about this region of space. Much we could explain if you would simply listen. The Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species." "Inferior." Chun repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something bitter. "Yes, I suppose you would see us that way. You have conquered so many. You have never met anything you could not defeat." She leaned closer to the screen. Her eyes caught the light strangely. "Admiral, I am going to ask you one time to turn your fleet around. Go home. Tell your Archon that humanity is not your enemy. We have no interest in war. But if you attack us, you will discover why we are alone in this part of the galaxy. You will learn what happened to every other species that once lived here." Thiessen felt a chill run down his spine, but he pushed the feeling away. He had not become Admiral of the Dominion fleet by showing fear. "Your words are meaningless. Fire the neural disruptors." The order went out to every ship. 12,000 vessels activated their most terrible weapon. The pulse spread across space, invisible but deadly, designed to shut down every living brain in its path. It struck the human vessel. Nothing happened. Chun remained on the screen, still smiling. "That was your neural disruptor, yes? Fascinating technology. We developed something similar 300 years ago. We stopped using it because we found it cruel." Thiessen stared at his readouts. The weapon had fired. It had struck the target. But the human ship continued forward as if nothing had occurred. "Impossible," Korax whispered. "Fire all weapons," Thiessen commanded. "Plasma lances, antimatter torpedoes, everything." The fleet unleashed its fury. Thousands of weapons streaked toward the small human vessel. Energy beams bright enough to melt moons. Explosives powerful enough to crack planets. None of them arrived. Something invisible caught every weapon. Plasma beams bent away into nothing. Torpedoes simply vanished. The human ship sailed through the firestorm without a scratch dot, and then it docked with the eternal supremacy. Thiessen ordered his guards to the docking bay. 100 soldiers with the best weapons the Dominion could create aimed at the airlock door. When it opened, they would kill whoever stepped through. The door opened. Ambassador Chun walked out alone. She was small, fragile-looking, dressed in simple gray clothing. She carried no weapons. She showed no fear. "Kill her," Thiessen ordered through the communication system. The soldiers fired. Energy bolts and plasma bursts filled the air. Chun raised one hand. Every shot stopped. They hung in the air around her like frozen raindrops, glowing with deadly energy that could not move forward. She looked at them with what might have been disappointment. "We really did hope you would just talk," she said. She closed her hand. The frozen weapons fire dissolved into nothing. The soldiers tried to run. They found they could not move. Not paralyzed. They could breathe. They could blink. They could feel their hearts pounding with terror. But their legs would not obey. Chun walked past them without a glance. She made her way through the corridors of the eternal supremacy as if she had walked them 1,000 times. Doors opened before her. Crew members who tried to stop her found themselves gently pushed aside by invisible hands. She arrived on the command deck. Thiessen drew his personal weapon, an ancient blade that had belonged to his family for generations. Chun looked at it with mild interest. "Admiral, I did not come here to fight. I came to warn you. What your fleet is attempting, it cannot succeed. Not because we are more powerful than you, though we are. Not because your weapons cannot hurt us, though they cannot, but because attacking humanity means awakening something that you are not prepared to face. More threats, Thiessen growled. More tricks, not tricks. Truth. Chen's voice grew heavy with sorrow. You think you know war. You think you know power. But you have spent 12 million years conquering species that were, as you say, inferior. You have never met anything truly dangerous. She stepped closer. Her eyes began to glow with soft golden light. We have fought things that exist between dimensions. Things that feed on consciousness itself. Things that erased entire civilizations while your dominion was still learning to make fire. Thiessen wanted to call her a liar, but he could not speak. The golden light in her eyes was growing brighter, and inside it he saw something, a glimpse of darkness that was not empty, a void that was alive and hungry. We did not become what we are by choice, Chung continued. We became what we are because we had to, because something had to stand between the darkness and the light. We are not your enemies, Admiral. We are the wall that protects this galaxy from things it cannot imagine. She let the light fade from her eyes. Thiessen gasped for breath. You have 12 hours to withdraw. After that, I cannot protect you from what comes next. She turned and walked back towards the docking bay. No one tried to stop her. Thiessen stood alone on his command deck, surrounded by officers who would not meet his eyes. His hands shook. His mind burned with the memory of what he had seen. And for the first time in his very long life, Admiral Thiessen of the Veteran Dominion was afraid. Thiessen did not sleep during those 12 hours. He sat in his quarters and tried to understand what he had witnessed. His mind kept returning to the golden light in the human ambassador's eyes, to the glimpse of something vast and terrible that lurked beyond normal sight. His officers came with reports. The neural disruptors had fired perfectly. Every system showed normal function. The weapons simply did not work on humans. No one could explain why. When the 12 hours ended, Thiessen returned to the command deck. His fleet still surrounded the human colony world. Ambassador Chen's small ship still hung in space nearby, waiting. Korax approached him with eager eyes. Admiral, we should attack the planet directly. Whatever tricks the humans use, surely they cannot protect an entire world. Thiessen hesitated. Chun had warned him. She had shown him something that still gave him nightmares. But he was Admiral of the Dominion fleet. He had never retreated from battle. If he fled now, the Archon would have him executed for cowardice. Begin orbital bombardment, he ordered. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The fleet turned its weapons toward New Helsinki. Plasma lances designed to melt cities. Kinetic impactors that could crack continents. Antimatter bombs that could boil oceans. They fired. The beams curved. The bombs veered away. Every weapon bent around the planet as if space itself had become a shield. They struck nothing. They destroyed nothing. What is happening? Korax screamed. A new voice filled the command deck. Ambassador Chun, broadcasting from her ship. Admiral, I had hoped you would listen. I had hoped you would be different from all the others. But you are not. So now I must show you the truth. I must show you why humanity fights. The viewing screens changed. Every screen on every ship in the fleet showed the same images. Not the battle. Not the planet. Something else entirely. History. 250 years ago, humanity had spread to the stars with joy and wonder. They had believed they were alone in the universe. They had believed space was empty and waiting to be explored. They were wrong. The first sign came when a colony ship vanished. Then another. Then 3 more. Search parties found nothing, no wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. Just empty space where ships had been. Then the colony on Proxima fell silent. A rescue mission found the planet empty. 8 million people gone. Buildings still standing. Food still on tables. But every human had vanished as if they had never existed. They called them the Absence. Creatures that existed between dimensions, in the spaces between the atoms of normal matter. They fed on consciousness, on thoughts and feelings and souls. They had slept for billions of years. The noise of human minds spreading across the stars had awakened them. The war lasted 40 years. Earth itself was nearly consumed. The Absence tore through cities, drinking the minds of millions in seconds. Conventional weapons did nothing. Nuclear bombs passed through them like light through glass. Nothing humanity built could hurt them. But humanity did not surrender. Scientists worked while soldiers died. Researchers spent their lives searching for any weakness, any defense. Billions sacrificed themselves to buy time. And finally, humanity found the answer. The Absence existed in dimensions beyond normal space. But humans could learn to touch those dimensions too. Not to become like the Absence, but to fight them on their own ground. The first generation of Wardens was born. Humans who had been changed, enhanced, given the ability to reach beyond normal reality. They could not be called entirely human anymore. They lived for centuries. They could bend space and time. They could see into dimensions that would drive ordinary minds insane. And they could hurt the Absence. The war turned. Slowly, painfully, humanity pushed back. The Absence was contained, imprisoned in pocket dimensions that the Wardens created and maintained. The creatures were not destroyed. They could not be destroyed. But they were locked away, watched, guarded. The images on the screens showed the containment zones. Entire sectors of space where nothing lived, where warning beacons screamed eternal alerts. Places where the Absence still writhed and hungered behind walls of bent reality. The gaps in human territory that Archivist Mallara had noticed. The screens went dark. Ambassador Chun's voice returned. Now you understand. Humanity does not conquer because we have no need for conquest. We do not expand aggressively because we are busy keeping the darkness locked away. Every species that once lived in this region of space is gone, not because of us, but because of what we guard against. Thiessen could not speak. His officers stood frozen with horror. You wanted to see proof, Chun said. Very well. I will show you what we protect you from. I will let you see what waits in the dark places between dimensions. I will give you one glimpse of the Absence. No, Thiessen whispered. Please. But it was too late. Chun opened the window. Just for a moment. Just a crack. Thiessen saw. He saw darkness that was alive. He saw hunger that had no end. He saw something vast and ancient that looked back at him with 1 billion eyes made of nothing. It wanted him. It wanted his thoughts, his memories, his soul. It wanted to drink his consciousness like water. He screamed. Across the fleet, thousands of others screamed with him. Some fainted. Some sobbed. One officer pulled out his sidearm and shot himself rather than live with the memory of what he had seen. Then the window closed. And the vision ended. Thiessen lay on the deck of his ship, tears streaming from his eyes. His whole body shook. He had seen war. He had seen death. He had seen horrors that would haunt lesser beings forever. But he had never seen anything like the Absence. Chun's voice came one final time, soft with compassion. Now you understand why humanity does not fear your fleet. Now you understand why we hoped you would simply talk. We are not your enemies, Admiral. We never were. We are the wall between your civilization and the things that would consume it. She paused. The question is, what will you do now? Thiessen lay on the cold deck and tried to remember how to breathe. Everything he had believed about the universe had just been destroyed. The Dominion was not the greatest power in existence. It was not even close, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, something ancient was still hungry, still waiting, still watching. The fleet was breaking apart. Not physically. The ships still floated in formation around New Helsinki. But something far more important had shattered. The spirit of the Dominion Armada lay in pieces. Across 12,000 vessels, half the officers who had witnessed Chun's revelation refused to fight. They had seen the absence. They had felt its hunger reaching for their minds. They wanted nothing more than to return home and forget this terrible place existed. The other half refused to believe. Vice Admiral Corax gathered the doubters on a secure channel. His voice burned with anger as he addressed them. It was an illusion, a trick. The humans use some kind of technology to project images directly into our minds. They want us to flee without a fight. It felt real, one captain said quietly. Of course it felt real. That is what makes it effective. But think, if humans had this kind of power, why would they hide for 300 years? Why would they not have conquered the galaxy themselves? The doubters murmured agreement. Corax pressed his advantage. Admiral Thyssen has been broken by enemy psychological warfare. He is no longer fit to command. I am taking control of this fleet under emergency protocols. All vessels loyal to the Dominion will follow my orders. Thyssen, still recovering in his quarters, heard the announcement. He forced himself to stand. His legs felt weak. His mind still echoed with the memory of the absence. But he could not let Corax lead those ships to destruction. He reached the command deck just as Corax was issuing attack orders. "Stop," Thyssen commanded. His voice cracked but held firm. "You do not understand what you are doing." Corax turned with contempt in his eyes. "I understand perfectly. I understand that you have been broken by human tricks. Step aside, Admiral. Let those with courage finish this mission. It was not a trick. I saw what they showed me. I felt it trying to consume my consciousness. If you attack, you will doom this entire fleet. Then I will be the one remembered for bringing humanity to heel." Corax drew his weapon. "Admiral Thyssen, you are relieved of command." Thyssen looked around the deck. Half the officers looked at him with sympathy. Half looked at him with disgust. He had served the Dominion his entire life. He had given everything to the Empire. But he had also seen the truth. "Corax, please. We can still withdraw. We can tell the Archon what we learned. We can—" The energy bolt hit him in the chest. Thyssen fell, his body suddenly cold, his vision fading. "Traitor's death for a traitor's cowardice," Corax announced. "All ships, prepare for maximum assault. We will burn that planet to ash." Ambassador Chun watched from her vessel as the fleet reorganized under new command. She had hoped, as she always hoped. But hope was not enough. She activated her communication device. "This is Chun to the Warden Council. The Dominion fleet is preparing to attack. Admiral Thyssen is down, possibly dead. Vice Admiral Corax has assumed command." A voice responded, heavy with ancient weariness. "Do we have permission to respond?" "Not yet. Let them fire first. Let there be no doubt that we acted in defense." "Understood. All wardens standing by." Chun closed the channel and watched the Dominion fleet align its weapons. Thousands of plasma lances aimed at the planet below. Hundreds of antimatter launchers prepared to fire. A civilization of billions about to attempt the murder of millions. Corax gave the order. "Fire everything. Leave nothing alive." The fleet unleashed its full fury. Every weapon fired simultaneously. The darkness of space turned bright with energy beams and explosions. Enough firepower to crack a world in half streaked toward New Helsinki. Chun raised her hand. A pulse spread from the planet below. Not a weapon, something stranger. A frequency that existed between dimensions. A vibration that touched the fabric of reality itself. Every Dominion ship went dark. Life support failed. Engines died. Weapons systems crashed. Across 12,000 vessels, every piece of technology stopped functioning at the same instant. But the crews were alive. Floating in darkness, screaming with terror, but breathing. Korak stumbled through the pitch-black corridors of his ship, trying to find any system that still worked. His flashlight produced only dim illumination. His communicator gave only static. Chun's voice somehow reached him anyway, clear as if she stood beside him. "We do not kill unless we must, Vice Admiral. Your weapons have not been destroyed. They have been removed. They no longer exist in this dimension. You cannot get them back." Korax screamed curses into the darkness. "Your fleet will be towed to the edge of human space. Your life support will function during the journey. We have made sure of that. Emergency supplies will be provided. When you reach Dominion territory, your engines will return." "You cannot do this," Korax gasped. "You cannot just send us away. We can. We are. And we are doing so as an act of mercy, not cruelty. You came here to murder millions of innocent people. We are responding by sending you home unharmed." Chun paused. Her voice grew softer, sadder. "You have been judged, Vice Admiral. Not as enemies, but as children who reached for fire without understanding. Go home. Tell your Archon what happened here. Tell him that humanity forgives those who attack us. But tell him also that we do not forget." Across the fleet, the same message played. Crews wept with relief and terror. Some fell to their knees in gratitude for their lives. Others raged against the humiliation of total defeat. But none of them could deny the truth anymore. Humanity had stopped an entire invasion fleet without killing a single person. They had removed every weapon from existence with a thought. They had shown mercy to enemies who deserved none. What kind of species had that much power and that much restraint? On the command deck of the Eternal Supremacy, someone found Admiral Thesson. The energy bolt had not killed him. His personal shield had absorbed most of the damage. He was wounded badly, but alive. When he learned what had happened, he wept not from sorrow. Not from pain, from relief. "They could have destroyed us," he whispered. "Every ship, every person. They could have erased us from existence." "Yes," said the officer, who had found him, "but they chose not to." "Yes." Thiessen lay in the darkness of his ruined ship and thought about everything he had learned. About the absence and the wardens. About humanity's secret war to protect the galaxy. About mercy shown to those who came with murder in their hearts. The Dominion had always believed that power meant conquest. That strength meant destruction. That the strong existed to rule the weak. Humanity had just demonstrated a different kind of power. A different kind of strength. And Thiessen knew, with absolute certainty, that the galaxy would never be the same. The crippled fleet began its slow journey home. Behind them, New Helsinki turned peacefully beneath its 3 moons. Its people went about their lives, barely aware how close they had come to destruction, and far away on a throne built from conquest. Iarkan Talix Vir woke screaming from a nightmare he could not remember. Something had touched his mind. Something had sent him a message. Something wanted him to know that his empire had just made the greatest mistake in its 12-million-year history. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed. The Veteran Dominion no longer existed. Not destroyed, transformed. When the crippled fleet returned home and word spread of what had happened, the reaction was not what anyone expected. High Archon Calix Vir had not slept properly since that night. The message burned in his mind, showing him the same terrible vision that Thiessen had witnessed. He saw the absence. He understood, finally, What humans protected the galaxy from Dot, and he understood that everything he had built was wrong. In a speech that shocked the Empire, the Archon announced the end of the Dominion. He released every conquered species from their bondage. He returned stolen resources and territory. He dissolved the chains that had bound 40,000 civilizations for millions of years. His generals called him mad. His advisors begged him to reconsider. Some attempted assassination, but the Archon had seen the truth. The Dominion had spent 12 million years conquering and destroying, and in all that time, they had never faced anything truly dangerous. They had been children playing war games while humanity stood against horrors beyond imagination. "We are not worthy to rule," Calix-Vion declared. "We never were." He abandoned his throne and went into exile. The last anyone heard, he had become something like a monk, spending his final years in quiet meditation and atonement. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Species that had feared the Dominion for millennia suddenly found themselves free. And they all heard the same story: humanity had defeated 12,000 warships without killing anyone. Humanity had powers beyond understanding. Humanity had been protecting the galaxy in secret for centuries. Questions followed. What were humans protecting against? What else hid in the darkness? What did humanity know that no one else did? Ambassadors arrived at human space in waves, not to threaten or demand, to ask, to learn, to understand. Chun met them with the same patient kindness she had shown the Dominion. She told them about the absence. She showed them the containment zones. She explained the war that humanity had fought and won, and the eternal vigilance required to maintain that victory. Some species fled in terror when they learned the truth. They preferred ignorance to fear, but most stayed. Most listened. Most understood that the universe was far more dangerous than they had ever imagined, and that humanity had been standing alone against that danger for centuries. "You do not have to stand alone anymore," the ambassador from the Keth Collective said. "Let us help." Chun smiled with genuine warmth. "We had hoped someone would say that." The Galactic Compact was formed within 6 months. A voluntary alliance of species dedicated to watching the containment zones, monitoring for breaches, and preparing for the day the absence might find a way to escape. Human wardens trained representatives from each member species. The training was difficult. Most beings could not handle even a small glimpse of what existed between dimensions. But some could. Those few became the first non-human wardens in history. The galaxy finally had a purpose beyond conquest and survival. It had something to protect, something to fight for. And at the center of it all stood humanity. Not as rulers, not as conquerors. As wardens. Admiral Thiessen recovered from his wounds and became the official liaison between the former Dominion military and the new compact. He spent his days teaching young officers about the reality of power, that true strength came not from destruction, but from protection. Archivist Melora left her dusty archives and joined the compact's historical division. She had been the only one in the Dominion to see the warning signs. Now she worked to ensure that the galaxy would never forget its history again. And Ambassador Chun stood on a balcony on Earth, watching ships from 100 species arrive for the first full summit of the Galactic Compact. Melora found her there, gazing at the sky with ancient eyes. "I have to ask something," Melora said. Chun nodded. "Ask. Could you really have stopped us? If we had not listened, if we had fought to the last ship, what would have happened?" Chun was quiet for a long moment. The ships kept landing below, carrying delegates from civilizations that had been enemies for millions of years. Now they came together in peace, united by a truth they had never imagined. "We have removed species from existence before," Chun finally said. "It brings us no joy. The energy required, The cost to ourselves and reality itself. It is not something we do lightly. But you would have. Chun turned to look at Melora. Her eyes held the weight of centuries, the memory of battles fought against things that should not exist. To protect what we guard. Yes, the absence cannot be allowed to spread. If your fleet had threatened our containment zones, if you had risked releasing what we keep imprisoned, we would have done what was necessary. Melora shivered despite the warm evening air. That much power. How do you not become corrupted by it? By remembering why we have it. Chun smiled softly. We did not become wardens because we wanted power. We became wardens because something had to stand between the light and the darkness. Because someone had to sacrifice their humanity to protect everyone else's. She gestured at the ships filling the sky. But now, at last, we do not have to stand alone. The summit lasted 3 weeks. Treaties were signed. Alliances were formed. For the first time in galactic history, species worked together not for conquest or trade, but for protection of all life. On the final day, Chun addressed the assembled delegates. Representatives from over 200 species filled the great hall. Creatures of every shape and size, speaking every language, carrying every kind of hope and fear. For 250 years, humanity carried a burden we thought we could never share, Chun said. We watched the darkness. We guarded the gates. We sacrificed billions of our own people to keep the galaxy safe from things it did not know existed. She looked across the hall at faces that were finally ready to understand. Today, that changes. Today, we become partners in the great work. Today, the galaxy wakes up to its true nature, both the danger that threatens us all and the courage that can defeat it. Her voice rose with emotion. We do not know what tomorrow brings. The absence still waits in its prison. Other threats may exist that we have not yet discovered. But whatever comes, we will face it together. As allies, as friends, as family. The hall erupted in cheering. Creatures who had never met embraced. Enemies became friends. The galaxy, for the first time in its long history, was united and in the deepest containment zones, in the spaces between dimensions, something ancient stirred. It pressed against its prison walls and felt something it had not felt in eons. Fear that it faced humanity alone. It had been beaten, barely, by a single species willing to sacrifice everything. Now, that species had allies. Now an entire galaxy stood, ready to fight. The darkness withdrew deeper into its prison and waited. But it would not wait forever. And when it finally emerged, it would find the wardens ready. Not one species standing alone against the void. A galaxy standing together. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night. Perhaps it was only imagination. Or perhaps it was the universe itself recognizing that something had changed. Humanity had carried the torch, alone for so long. Now, at last, others had stepped forward to share the light, and the darkness had finally learned to be afraid.